Okay. Um, Chair Etchart, if you want to go ahead and get started, that is fine.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for attending this morning. We have a great slate that Ms. Sullivan has put together for us. I'm really excited to get going on it. So let's go ahead and Ms. Sullivan, will you please take the roll?
Yes, thank you, and good morning, everybody. Where's my list? Okay, Chair Etchart,
Aye.
Tony King,
Here.
Senator Harvey,
Here.
Senator Noland,
Here.
Senator Zolnikoff, no. Representative Seconder, no. Director Brereton,
Here.
Stacy Anderson, no. Serena Brewer,
Here.
Webb Brown,
Here.
Ed Buttrey,
Here.
Jennifer Hensley,
Here.
Brad Longcake,
Here.
Kristen McCauley,
Here.
Amy Narrison,
Here.
Allison Paul,
Here.
Serena Riesberg, or Sierra, I'm sorry.
Here.
Sorry about that. Jason Small
Here.
and Gail Tronstad.
Present.
All right, and let me just make sure we've got everybody in. Everybody jumped on at the same time. Okay, and so I will go ahead and introduce staff and our guest presenters that have joined the call so far. So I'm Erin Sullivan, policy analyst and lead staff for the task force and the subcommittee. And then we have Lisa Patzer, who is our technology expert. And then also Kevin Bragg, who is our licensing bureau chief, and Jennifer Stallkamp, who is deputy chief legal and your legal counsel. And then we have, we got to get one more person promoted. Stacy Anderson just joined for the record. And then for the for our first topic, we have three gentlemen that have agreed to present to you. We have Daniel Logston, who's the director for the National Center of Interstate Compacts, Donnie Woodyard, the executive director for the EMS Compact, and Nathan Staley, the executive director for the Montana chapter of the National Association of Social Workers. So they are all on the call as well today. And that is it, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sullivan. So I see that Mr. Logston is on, and please forgive me if you're a doctor and I didn't say that. But, sir, we have you as number one on our agenda. Would you like to start?
Yes. Can I share my screen? I've got a presentation, but I promise won't dwell on all the slides.
You should be able to share your
Okay,
screen.
great. That's part one. Part two is, can I actually make it work? Second. All right. With hope everybody can see that. All right, I'll take that as a yes. All right. Thank you for allowing CSG to present at about interstate compacts. These licensure compacts are the vast majority of our work now. Just to give you some background on council state government, so we're a membership organization for states. We're nonpartisan, nonprofit. Every state's a member. Every state pays their dues. We appreciate that. We founded the National Center for Interstate Compacts in 2004. CSG was founded in 1933. We played a role in the development of most of the national compacts, if you will, and decided that since we were in that space so much, we'd create a National Center for Interstate Compacts. I got here in 2017, just as these licensure compacts were starting to gain popularity with the state. So we provide technical assistance. We don't lobby. We provide education around interstate compacts, what they mean. Want to make sure that legislators and state officials understand, board officials in the governor's office, exactly what they do, what they can't do. Be realistic about that. We think that they're going to be a great benefit for the state once they all get up and operating, But again, we're here to provide technical assistance and education about them, and believe that they will make a difference for the states. But understand that there's always questions and concerns about that. Um, you've seen the proliferation of these licensure compacts mostly because um, um, of a grant program that we entered into with the Department of War, Department of Defense. In the 2020 National Defense Authorization Act, Congress created a cooperative program and directed the department to enter into it with council of state governments in order to create up to 10 occupational licensure compacts. And the reason for that is frankly, regulatory certainty. The department believes that that compacts are really the gold standard for spouse licensure in the sense of when they move to other states. Every state has programs to help and pathways to help practitioners and military spouses in licensed professions. But the issue that they run into is, they're in a place 2 or 3 years and then they're off to another place. And what a compact provides is, again, that regulatory certainty that they know exactly what they're going to have to do, if anything, in order to continue the practice. So we created right off the bat, teaching was the first one, but here are the ones that we created in the first tranche. All of these, I think, except massage therapy, is up and operating. And then we've got these 3 right here that are currently respiratory therapy and athletic trainers. They've either hit their number to begin operations, so we'll be convening them, or they're in the process of doing that. But we believe we'll convene all of these, both of these athletic trainer and respiratory therapy. We'll convene these compact commissions by the end of the year, and aesthetics probably next year. It'll go hand in hand with cosmetology because the same board essentially regulates the same profession in the vast majority of states, like speech pathology and audiology. Here are the current compact commissions that we work with. So we work with 12. Some of these are department cooperative agreement compacts. Some of them aren't. Audiology, speech language pathology, counseling, and OT were the first 3 compacts, licensure compacts that I worked on when I got here, and then the cooperative agreement came along. And these are the organizations that we work with: board organizations, membership organizations, certification organizations. And just quickly, interstate compacts, these are incredibly powerful agreements that states have at their disposal if they choose to use them. States cooperatively come together and address issues. They maintain state sovereignty. They allow states to respond with one voice, is the boilerplate. But they're not to be entered into lightly, and that's one of the things that we like to educate states on. But with these licensure compacts especially, we think creating this pathway, again, not only benefits military spouses, but also benefits practitioners at large. And that was an issue with the cooperative agreement. I also wanted to just mention these compacts that we've created under it. What the Senate Armed Services Committee told us was it can benefit the entire profession. It has to benefit, obviously, military spouses. So they were very generous in that part of that. Interstate compacts have to be enacted by the legislature and signed into law or allowed to become law by the governor, and that is how you get out of them. The best if an issue that's being addressed by compact, if a compact commission that's created out of that, if the states collectively won't need to enforce the provisions of the compact, it doesn't need to be binding. Compact's probably not the best way to approach it. But especially with disciplinary issues and how states have to cooperate on those, a compact really only makes sense if you're going to have a broad agreement for states. It does need to be binding because you want to ensure that states are going to cooperate, and they do, on any sort of disciplinary issues. And then the licensure compacts, again, they're simply a means to create another pathway for practitioners to practice in other states. We've seen states do address this in a number of ways. You see states enacting these universal licensure laws now. Those are great. The states are addressing mobility. The one thing benefit of a compact is it's both ways. So not only do practitioners coming into the state get the benefit, but your practitioners, the state's practitioners, can go out and practice as well. They establish uniform standards, which is important. States are willing to live, we found, if there's slight variances in how they regulate a profession. But if you've got a profession where there's wide variances, then you can't create a compact. Compacts thrive on uniformity. So, there have been professions that have come up in the past that wanted to explore an interstate compact. And there's just absolutely no way that we could have ever convinced states and wouldn't have tried to convince states that they ought to participate in a compact with another state where you just the standards and the scope of practice, especially for healthcare professions, just aren't the same. So if you see a profession with an interstate compact, not all of them are medicine or nursing, where they're virtually the same state to state, but they're in a very close range. Again, if you've got wide variances, states aren't going to feel comfortable joining that. You do sometimes see a compact where maybe 3 or 4 states don't meet the uniform requirements that the other states have, and a compact can help, promote that uniformity. But what we would never do, and what we, don't want any part of, and thankfully, this hasn't really come up, is a profession come to us or go to the states and want to create a compact where they got 25 states that do it the same and they believe it's the best practice, and they want to create a compact to sort of drive the other states to do that. That's not how you create public policy. Or it's not the best way to create public policy. So these compacts aren't one size fit all. They all operate a little bit differently. At core, they're the same. But certainly you have to make allowances for the professions. A lot of them wanted to approach things in different ways. You'll see some that thrive, that have a privilege model. You'll see some that have a multi-state license model. For teaching, neither one of those are going to work. So what we created with teaching is essentially a licensure exchange. There's also differences around teaching with regard to the data system, because states are so protective of that data that they generate around their teachers. So again, you can't just pull the PT compact down and everywhere it says PT write in occupational therapy or counselor and get it done. That just doesn't work. And it also doesn't elevate the issues or educate the state policymakers in the way that we do through the process that we have. So I'll provide these slides. I don't want to dwell on all these things too much, but obviously the benefits for practitioners, Montanans, and a number of these licensure compacts, you understand those. Benefits for licensing boards. I think the biggest thing here is the access to that compact data system and the ability to discipline practitioners in a multi-state practice environment, and then the benefits to the states. So I've got a slide over here for the numbers. So here's our current roster of occupational licensure compacts. You see physicians there with 45, nurses 43, and psychologists at 43. Alaska's considering all 3 of those right now, so you could see that number tick up. But here's where we stand as of today. Again, legislative sessions are winding down across the country, so you'll see some of this change. And then for the compact development, so I just wanted to briefly touch on this. Again, we're not going to ever get in the back room with someone and write an interstate compact. There's 3 distinct phases, and there's phases for the development process when you're writing it. We want to have a large group weigh in on this. We want to go out for stakeholder review and then make decisions on the draft based on that stakeholder review. And if we need to go back out, we will, because as a lot of you know, once the compact gets to the legislature, it can't be substantively changed. We'll run into issues where I think Maryland's got a statute actually that says you can't use shall not, you have to use may not. Fine, we can change the language for something like that. But these are contracts that states enter into with each other, and the terms have to be the same substantively in each state. So it's incumbent upon us and those promoting these compacts to make sure that they've been thoroughly vetted, and we do that. Even though now we've got plenty of examples and we know what work. We went through the same process for the 10th compact that we created through our cooperative agreement as we did the first one, or the first ones that I did when I got here back in 2017. And this sort of gives you a overview of, it takes us about a year now to draft a licensure compact. And then it takes them 2 to 3 years to get enough states to be able to stand up the Interstate Commission. And then, usually a year into that 2 to 3 years for the compact to become operational. And that is mainly due to the compact data system, which the cooperative agreement also helped us address by funding or helping to fund Compact Connect, which we created with the occupational, with the licensure compacts for audiology and speech language pathology, OT, and counseling. So again, and adverse actions, I think, are the main reason. Disciplinary issues are the main reason that I think for multi-state practice, especially with healthcare professions, that a licensure compact, I think, makes the most sense for states, although there are certainly other ways that they're addressing this. And with that, I'll stop to take any questions or wait till the end to take questions. And then there's my contact information, but obviously Aaron's got that. Thank you.
Thank you so much on that. And I think if the committee is okay with it, I want to take, I don't want to have our presenters wait. I just want to be able to move through this. So I would like to be able to move on to Donnie Woodyard next. But Mr. Lodgson, if people have questions for you, what's the best interest of your time and in consideration of Mr. Staley and and then Donnie Woodyard as well?
I've got this on my calendar for 2 hours, so I'm here. If folks want to put something in the chat, I can respond to it there, but I'm happy to wait and answer questions. That's not a problem for me.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Just in case the other presenters have any time constraints, let's go ahead and move on to Donnie Woodyard, please. This is with the EMS Compact.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Thank you so much for the opportunity. My name is Donnie, for the record. I'm the Executive Director of the United States Emergency Medical Services Compact. And just by relevant background for perhaps future questions, prior to this role, I did serve as a state EMS director in 2 states. I was the governor appointed commissioner for the EMS Compact, served as the chair of the EMS Compact Commission before this role. So I'm able to kind of see this through a lens and perspective that is semi-diverse through that. I too have a short presentation I will share. And from a time perspective, feel free to nudge me or limit as needed, and I will not duplicate what my colleague from CSG said. So quick facts about the EMS Compact. As I look into Montana, I see that Montana is already part of 43 compacts. You are certainly not new to compacts. The EMS Compact is similar to other compacts, but it's also unique and different. And I want to make sure that your committee understands the areas of how the EMS Compact is similar and different and what it means for Montana. Of all the compacts that are out there, the EMS Compact is probably most similar to the driver's license compact, which is a fairly unique model when it comes to occupational licensing. For the EMS Compact in particular, there are no fees, there are no paperwork, and there's no application required. So in some compacts, the individual fills out an application or purchases a privilege to practice or otherwise chooses to opt in. On the EMS Compact, it works like your driver's license, and that means that the moment you have someone in a EMS Compact member state that has a qualified state issued license, assuming there are no barriers there, such as discipline on the license record, that individual is automatically granted a privilege to practice in all the EMS Compact states. So this really removes the friction, it removes delays, and it provides an incredible benefit the moment a state joins, enacts the compact, and importantly, links in their data system. And I'll talk about that briefly. As my colleague mentioned, with the EMS Compact, an incredible benefit is states will gain instant access to the National EMS Coordinated Database. That's the government-operated database that our office operates, and I'll speak about what that means. An important note is that in Montana, I've had a 10-year history in multiple hats of working with your stakeholders here, as they have, since 2015, been working towards getting unified standards that meet that same standard as the EMS Compact requires. And they've done a tremendous job, and your colleagues have done a tremendous job. So today, Montana is what we would call compact ready. You have the same education, licensure standards. You have the same national examination that's used of all the states that are part of the EMS Compact. So you are what we call EMS Compact ready. And of a unique note, I did look through our current database that has licensure information of 22 of the 25 states. We're still working on 3 states to get them connected. But Montana already has at least 500 EMTs and paramedics that are already licensed with a privilege to practice in our data system. And that is because our compact does not require state residency. You can have multiple state licenses in the EMS compact structure. And so we found 500 493 to be specific, EMTs and paramedics with a Montana resident address that are already licensed in one or more EMS compact states. So your EMS providers have already started exploring the value and the benefit of the EMS compact. My colleague already mentioned about other compacts that Montana's in. Obviously, you're a part of many of these occupational licensure compacts already. The EMS compact, like our colleagues' compacts, they're rooted in the compact clause of the Constitution, and our compact was carefully drafted to ensure it met those requirements. Some specifics about the EMS compact, briefly on the history. We actually originated out of the Department of Homeland Security. And this goes back to 2012 when our colleagues at DHS recognized a national security and preparedness need for EMS being uniquely mobile as a profession, and that EMS personnel were having to cross over state lines on a routine, regular basis. And they actually explored, would it be possible to do a federal EMS license? And that got struck down really quick because of constitutional issues. State licensure is a function of the states. So that's when they pivoted and said, maybe we could do this occupational licensing compact. So the EMS compact was one of those early compacts. It followed nursing as the second occupational licensing compact. But our origins really started from that preparedness and homeland security perspective. Out of that, we had the model legislation. We did a year of education, and in 2015, Colorado and Texas are the first 2 states that passed the EMS compact legislation. 2017, we reached the 10-state threshold that the EMS compact requires, and we activated it in 2020, just in time for the pandemic. Today, we have 25 states. I will note that Connecticut and Arizona have both passed the legislation. It's pending enactment in both of those states. And we also anticipate Alaska will probably be the 3rd state to add it this year, which will bring us closer to 28 states. The EMS compact really looks at unique things to EMS, and that's looking at recruitment, retention, and relocation, surge, routine operations, daily operations, needs for disaster response, and education and training. Because EMS is a very mobile workforce by the definition of mobile medicine, we know that EMS clinicians are already exchanging borders between Montana and your neighboring states. And so the EMS compact was designed for those day-to-day operations. Real briefly about the law itself, the acronym of the law that I believe you will be considering in Montana the next session is called REPLICA, and that's simply the title of our compact. And so it's the recognition of EMS personnel licensure interstate compact. Within that, we have 15 components of our law, and you have the model legislation that's available for you. And I just want to highlight under the purpose section. And I believe this really outlines, the why of the EMS compact. And the first, and this is verbatim from the law, the EMS compact is intended to facilitate day-to-day movement. One of the questions I frequently get is there a time limit on the EMS compact? And there is not. So an individual with a valid license in any EMS compact state will be recognized for day-to-day operations. And in the clarification of our law, day-to-day could be for 1 hour, 1 week, 1 year, 1 month, or 1 lifetime. And so we encourage people to get licensed in the state that they consider their home, but the EMS compact remains operational regardless of that. So it's day-to-day operations. But the second thing is EMS is always linked in healthcare to an employer. EMS does not have independent practice authority. It's always linked back to an entity or an agency. So our compact requires an individual to be working for, paid or unpaid, but affiliated with an appropriate authority. And that appropriate authority is defined by the home state, by Montana. So whatever you define as an appropriate workplace for EMTs and paramedics, that would be an appropriate authority. In simple terms, as a Colorado paramedic today, I can't just show up in Montana if you're part of the compact and just start working as Donnie independent paramedic. No, I could show up, and if a Montana EMS agency chooses to affiliate me and chooses to say that, yes, I'm the right fit for that local community, then at that point, my license would be considered valid and my privilege would be considered valid. That's an important check and balance we have. And then finally, the EMS Compact provides immediate legal recognition. Like I said before, we're unique in the fact that there's no additional paperwork required. We also go through and encourage cooperation to increase access to EMS personnel, protect public health and safety, cooperate in all areas of licensure and regulation, supporting our military members, exchanging information, and that's the database part, compliance, and then accountability. So that's the core, that's the opening of the legislation. As my colleague noted, the sharing of information is important. So the EMS Compact created the National EMS Coordinated Database. This is created via the statute. And this is an example of what that looks like. So the moment a state joins the EMS Compact, the first step that we do is we work with your licensing authority and we go through and we deduplicate your licensure records. Your records always remain your records. Your data always remains your data, but we append your data with what we call the National EMS Identification Number. And what we do is we look at everyone licensed in Montana. We find anywhere else in the nation that they are licensed or have ever been licensed, and we also attach it to the national examination that they took for licensure. And if they did not take the national exam and are grandfathered in, we will create the National EMS ID number on their behalf. And at that point, Montana will get to see something that you currently today do not have access or knowledge to, and that is how many of your EMS personnel are already licensed in other states? Where are they practicing? Have they ever had licensed discipline in another state? And this becomes not only automated, but automatic as well. And so, for instance, you can see an example from my license in the National Coordinated Database. I'm currently licensed in 2 states, Louisiana and Colorado. And it's an old screenshot. I'm current in both. But you'll see that I'm licensed in 2 states. That means I have 2 home states for the purposes of the compact, for the EMS compact. You can also see I have a valid national EMS certification. I have a green outline that says I have a valid privilege to practice. This information is bidirectionally shared back to your state licensure office. And of importance, this is key for public protection. What we have found is that while the vast majority of individuals in any profession are honorable, there's always a small percentage that are not. And in that small percentage, what we're finding is that because states that are not part of compacts don't share information, sometimes those individuals migrate to states where they can hide and stay a step ahead of license discipline or public protection issues in other states. Our system addresses that. Regarding what it means for Montana to actually integrate this, there are no fees from our compact. We do not charge, but there is a data integration requirement. This would be a local requirement based on whoever your Montana licensing vendor is that handles your software currently. We offer what's called an API, a data integration there. And so this is the only part of the EMS Compact that you would really have to prepare a fiscal note for. And it's just based on what your local vendor charges. There's no charges from our side. And in our history with working with other states, it ranges from being free to between $2,000 to $5,000 is what I'm told. But that's your local vendor determines that, not our office. On the finance side, I will note that we do have in our model legislation the ability to have a state assessment. That's standard language in almost all compacts. We have never charged that. We have no intention on charging that. We have very stable funding. And if there was ever a future where that clause was enacted, it would require each of the governor appointed commissioners to actually agree to that, sign off on that, and all the states to do it. Bottom line is we have the provision. I do not believe it will ever be implemented, and it's not been implemented since 2013. We do have the commission, and this is the body that oversees the operations of the EMS Compact. It is a governmental body. We focus exclusively on the interstate practice of EMS. States maintain your local sovereignty always. The commission does have rulemaking authority, but it's a very narrow scope. And the scope of the rulemaking is what is granted by the compact law itself, and that is related to the interstate practice of EMS, how we share information between states, how we hold people accountable, individuals, if they're practicing in multiple states. And again, this requires a governor-appointed commissioner for our compact. Each state has one governor-appointed commissioner, and that has worked really well. Briefly about the operations, here's the current map of the compact, noting Arizona, Connecticut, and we believe Alaska will be coming on board. There are 5 things for states to do. Pass the law, require the National Registry of EMTs for initial licensure. So for EMTs and paramedics in Montana, you've already set this requirement. And this was a tremendous amount of work over the past couple of years in your state, but you are already here. So our compact recognizes and grandfathers in anyone that was licensed prior to this as a one-time grandfather into the compact. So everyone has the opportunity. But moving forward, you utilize the National Registry for initial licensure. You already do. Our compact requires as a prerequisite, this is a very important nuance point, it requires that the state conduct an FBI biometric criminal history check, so an FBI compliant. And so this is a prerequisite to the compact. Our compact does not provide the legal authority to do this. It's a prerequisite. So you'd have to make sure that you have the authority to do this. Our compact does not limit or define whom you may or may not license in your state. And so you retain that authority. It does require that you actually look, though, and review those records. The commission may limit individuals for a national privilege to practice based on certain background issues. So if someone's had a felony or has had license discipline, they will not have an immediate privilege to practice, and that allows states to maintain that sovereignty. You coordinate database access and have complaints. You're already compliant. Quick nuance about the EMS Compact. We use the language of a home state and remote state. Home state can be multiple states where you're licensed in. My example is Colorado, Louisiana. Remote state is any other state of the compact that I am not licensed in. And that's where the compact privilege works. It is an immediate privilege to practice, equivalent to that of a state license. For the individual, our compact requires for the individual to use this privilege, they have to be 18 years old. I do not know the licensure age in Montana. Some states license individuals under 18. That's okay. But the compact privilege is not valid until they're at least 18 years old. You have to have an unrestricted license. If Montana restricts someone's license for discipline or other reasons, or any state does, their compact privilege is thereby suspended in our system. So you have the assurance that anyone utilizing the privilege has a clean record and that you can have confidence that they meet the same standards as they would in your state. And I mentioned they have to be authorized with a local EMS agency and have a physician medical director. Real quick about scope of practice in EMS, and I'm happy to go through technical details on this if there's questions. Bottom line is because of our requirement to be with a local Montana agency, that is when you set the scope of practice for the state that you're practicing in. So EMS does have different scope of practices across the nation. We have one standard examination but your local scope of practice is set by your employer when you affiliate, and therefore anyone coming into Montana would operate at the same scope of practice as Montana operates at today. Then finally, a little bit about accountability. The EMS Compact provides Montana a few new, very important tools related to investigations and accountability of EMS clinicians. And this is one, it provides nationwide compact state subpoena authority. It allows states to cooperate on investigations. As a former state EMS director, I can tell you this is very important. I've lost count of the number of times when I was trying to work through an accountability issue, and the individual, because EMS is mobile, had something happen in a different state, or a transport that went across state lines. And without the compact, I was limited in my ability to share information between jurisdictions and states. The EMS compact solves that, it allows that, and that's very important. The numbers are very small. Most in the profession are great. But for those cases where public accountability demands an investigation, it's important for states to have this authority. Then finally, military. This offers expedited licensure for military members. The EMS Compact is a federal priority. It is specifically mentioned in the Department of the Air Force and the Department of War military base assessment. States that are part of the compact receive additional points on the military scorecard. It's also, as you are well aware, part of the CMS Rural Health Transformation Grant, where states do receive additional points on their application for being part of the EMS compact. And it's referred to in federal law under the Service Members Relief Act. With that, I'm happy to stand for any questions now or later. Tremendous opportunity, and thank you, Montana, and members of the committee for preparing for this.
Thank you so much, Mr. Woodyard. We really appreciate all of your comments and presentation about the EMS Compact. If you're okay sticking around, we'll go ahead and move to Mr. Staley, if that's all right with you.
Of course.
Okay, excellent. Mr. Staley, take it away. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, y'all. I'm going to share my screen. So let's see. I have to wait until the other share is off.
I am.
There we
There it
go.
is.
Perfect. Excellent. Okay. And I'm also going to put in the chat for our hosts and panelists a link to these slides. So if you want to follow along on your own screen, you're welcome to do that. So my name is Nathan Staley. I'm the executive director with the NESW Montana chapter. And again, NESW, we are the National Association of Social Workers. I've been in Montana my whole life. I'm a Montana native, love Montana, and I'm currently living in Billings. And I'm a social worker, so I'm a licensed clinical social worker. And I've been working for NESW since 2022. And I'm just really excited to kind of share a little bit about our journey with the Social Work Compact in Montana and about our profession. Because one of the challenges we faced, as you'll see through some of the slides back in 2025, when we attempted to pass the Social Work Compact, was really a misunderstanding of our profession. And so we can't really talk about the compact without having a couple of slides that hit what is social work. So I'm going to kind of start there. And then we'll walk through some of the barriers or questions we've had around the compact specifically. So I want to just kind of start by, giving a quick overview of what the social work profession is. One of the first things to know is that we've been around for a very, very long time. We're a very old profession. One of the first social work class was at Columbia University back in 1898. And so our profession has a lot of roots and a lot of really robust components to it. So one of those components is our code of ethics. And this is something that all social workers follow, abide by, and it's been in existence for many, many years. We also are very highly educated professionals. For example, I went and got my master's degree in social work. It was a 2-year program, but there's also the bachelor's level, which is a 4-year program. So we're highly educated. And then once we get our degrees, it's not over, right? We get licensed, the majority of us. So with that supervision of licensure, we have a whole process where we have to collect thousands of hours under supervision to make sure we're high quality workers. And then finally, with most professions, there's that exam. So there's a national exam to get licensed, you have to pass. So I just want to kind of highlight that. I think it's important for folks to understand just how high quality we are and what we do in our profession in a lot of ways. And of course, we're regulated. So the Montana Board of Behavioral Health oversees 3 license types for social workers. And I won't go into the weeds too far on that, but in Montana, there are the bachelor license, master's license, and the clinical license. And if there's questions about any of that, I'm happy to go in those weeds a little bit further. But essentially, where are we? What do we do? I think that's, again, another really important question we get. Go back a slide. So we're kind of everywhere, and that's kind of one of the hard parts to talk about with our profession is like, well, what do we do? And we do a lot of things. We do things in schools and hospitals. We're therapists. We work with veterans. And a lot of us, again, have that education, of course, but we get that license. And if we're doing therapy or clinical work, we have to have that clinical license. And that's, again, what my license is. So just wanted to highlight we do a lot. And I think that's really exciting to be able to share this with you all so you can kind of understand a little bit more about our profession. And then this is just a data slide. If you're kind of curious, well, how many of us are out there? This is a report from the Board of Behavioral Health, again, the licensing board for social work and other behavioral health licenses. And we've got over 2,000 social workers that are licensed. So again, supervised, taken the exam, highly educated workforce. And we want to grow that, right? That's the whole goal of the compact and the Rural Health Transformation Project in Montana. We're trying to create more high quality workers to help Montanans. So now I'm going to shift gears and just talk briefly kind of about our work in the compact. And I won't hit too, Mr. Logsdon, Mr. Woodyard, you guys did a great job kind of hitting some of the things that I was going to hit. So I might keep it a little bit shorter on this next section, but I'm excited for questions from any of the committee members. So, like I said, I've been with NESW since 2022, and we've been thinking about compacts and understanding them since I started in my role. And one of the first things that we were involved with was actually the 2023 Counseling Compact. So in 2023 at the legislature, Montana passed the Counseling Compact. I was at the hearings for that and spoke in support of the compact because of its ability to increase the workforce around counseling and therapists. So that was kind of my first foray into it. And then in 2024, we actually had CSG, so the Council of State Governments, where Mr. Logston's working. We had a webinar in collaboration with them that was a statewide webinar that kind of asked the question to our professionals and those that serve patients: do we want to do this? Does the compact make sense for social workers across Montana? And the answer to that in 2024 was around resounding yes. We had a lot of our members who are a part of our association and non-members that are just working in Montana saying, this would be great for our patients. This would be great to increase our ability to help Montanans. And so we said, okay, let's do this. And so in 2025, we worked to bring the compact legislation. And so that was SB 140. One thing to note is we already went through all the process of, making all the language work for our state. There's that templated model that CSG's put together, and it's ready to go again if we want to do this. Actually, Aaron Sullivan was the guru that helped make sure that the language was correct back in 2025 when we pushed this at the legislature. So then you might be asking, well, what happened? Why didn't we pass this? Right? And so that's what I'm going to kind of hit next with some of the kind of questions that came up from lawmakers and others. But I will say this was kind of the timeline of what we've already done in Montana with the compact. So before we jump into some of the questions that we've had around, some of the concerns, I just wanted to kind of bring up the map again, because I think this is a really helpful picture to share. The Social Work Compact is one of the fastest adopted compacts. It's, as I think it was 2021 when it became a compact, became a thing. And we've already had over 30 states implement it. And I just want to highlight, like, a lot of these states are rural and have large rural areas. And they have similar workforce and challenges to access like Montana does. So I think that that's important to recognize that our values and the values of a lot of these other states, I do think are in sync. So that's something to consider as we look at who are we talking about when we think about that reciprocity between states with the social work. Hmm. So again, some of the common questions that we've had um, that came up during the 2025 legislation and after that were some things that we want to just clarify. And so one of the things was like, well, could an out-of-state social worker practice in Montana and ignore Montana law or rules? And essentially, the answer to that is no. Social workers practicing in Montana must follow Montana law and administrative rules, and we get to keep that authority over practice within our state. So, we think about this home state model that Mr. Woodyard discussed. Well, if the home state doesn't have the same number of hours of supervision or doesn't have the same number, requirement around examination, it's not gonna work, right? So the compact rules are very much in alignment with Montana rules. But if there's ever a case where we have rules or laws, well, they can't do those things in Montana. So I think that's really important to kind of recognize we keep that authority. And so that was one question that I wanted to kind of bring in. And I think there's three questions here, and there's been more. So if there's other ones, I'm excited to answer any questions that the committee has. But will the compact make it easier for unsafe social workers to practice in Montana? And this one, I think it was Mr. Woodyard that kind of spoke to this already with the EMS compact. But again, this actually will improve the shared data across states. Right now, if I am licensed, let's say in Wyoming, and I want to come to Montana, I can do that. I can apply for a separate license, and Montana would look at what I submit, and they may approve it. But what can happen, like to Mr. Woodyard's point, we could have bad actors who are trying to kind of escape something that's going on in their other state and come to another state and practice again. And they can do that easier when you don't have shared data. So when you think about the commission and the idea that there's this shared data platform and this database, we will have access to that shared data across state lines, and we will be able to see more clearly and act if somebody is doing something in another state that goes against Montana law or anything within the compact itself. So I think that's again another important thing to think about is that the way this is set up is that if we pass this, we're a part of the commission, and right now it's a great time to be a part of that commission for this compact because it's so new. No social work compact licenses have been administered because they're actually still in the process of defining some very final commission rules. So the earlier we join this compact, the more influence we have on some of those shared data components that the commission is standing up currently. So then I have just one other question that I wanted to kind of hit. And this idea around the financial burden for passing this compact. So first, I want to just highlight that back in 2025, Senate Bill 140, the fiscal note did not project any ongoing revenue loss for this. It did have an initial IT implementation expense, but a lot of this is going to be paid for by the Association of Social Work Boards. And the initial, Department of Defense, Department of War, they funded this in 2021. So there's not a lot beyond, the question of how much do we want to charge for a compact license? We get to control that. So there'll be some IT implementation and getting that connection back to the commission database, but we're kind of primed for that because the counseling compact, like I mentioned, passed in 2023 in Montana, and they're working through it right now as to how do we administer those compact licenses. And so that, understanding how that shared data works for counselors, we're primed to do that now for social workers if we choose to. So I do think this is a great time for us to join for multiple reasons, but I would say that, again, this is just some data I wanted to kind of answer regarding that common question. And so really, I kind of want to end with reiterating some of the positives, like why do social workers want this? Why do Montanans, what will they benefit from if we do this? And so it all comes back to workforce. We are a high quality workforce as social workers, and this will increase access to us. We're very rural, obviously, so we want to be able to support underserved communities. And if somebody's out in the middle of nowhere in Montana and they really are struggling, let's say they have an eating disorder, and there's nobody in their community that has that expertise. The compact would allow for telehealth service with someone with that expertise who's able to serve that Montanan. And I think that's the bottom line is we want to be able to help more Montanans and give them that access that they deserve to solve some of the challenges going on. So that continuity of care is also, something to highlight. If you are not licensed in another state and your patient, let's say you're doing therapy and they move to another state or they go on vacation even, you can't serve them unless you have a license in another state. So when you think about college students on summer break and they go back home, well, they can't receive services unless the social worker, decides to pay all the fees and get licensed in a state where the students, back home. So this would solve and really help that continuity of care for people who move or travel. And then, of course, we've already hit the military families component, but that's really one of the biggest reasons this compact started and continues to be so important for Montana because we have one of the highest military and veteran populations. So, again, I'm going to keep it a little more brief on some of the weeds because I think my two colleagues, Logsdon and Woodyard, you guys did an excellent job of kind of hitting some of the nitty gritty there. So I think I'm just going to kind of wrap it there, keep it short and sweet, and hopefully there's some questions from the committee here. Thank you all for the opportunity to share the Social Work Compact.
Thank you so much, Mr. Staley. Really appreciate everyone's presentation there. And what I'd like to do now is open it up to committee members for discussion on the presentation. And I see Senator Chair Mark Noland. Mark Noland, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is for Danny Woodyard. So a question I have is, so how long does a disciplinary procedure take? Now, we all know it depends on the issue, severity, all those kind of things, but I'm trying to get a general feel. How long does a disciplinary issue take? And does a person stay working under the compact or are they put on hold, say if it's an ethics issue? I've heard it explained, but I guess I need some more clarification.
Yes, sir, Mr. Senator, through the chair. So individual states always retain the authority for licensing discipline. And the timeline is really determined by the state. Now, the EMS compact does have a couple triggers in there, and that is within 48 hours of a state taking a discipline action, then we require the database to be updated and that information to be shared with other states. And we do have a multi-layered approach to that. So for the most egregious issues that a state could find, something that would be considered a threat to public safety, are the ability for someone to safely practice. That has a 48-hour notification maximum window. In reality, it's nearly instant the moment a state takes the action. And so that is what I can answer from the compact side. Different states take different times to actually receive a complaint and investigate and determine if the complaint is credible. How this impacts the compact is you would have two elements in Montana. You would have your Montana workforce that you license, and that's going to follow the process that you do today. Now, where it would impact them is if they are practicing outside of state on a Montana license. The moment your office determines that an issue exists, then that would be shared to the other states. And if Montana suspends the license, it would be suspended elsewhere. The inverse of that is if, say, me as a Colorado clinician is working in Montana, you still have the authority to suspend my privilege to practice in Montana, and that's going to follow your timeline. Here's one nuance that's very important. The compact and the compact privilege never imposes an action on a Montana issued license. So let me explain it this way. Say that a Montana person was operating in Colorado and Colorado found due process to suspend their ability to practice. That would suspend their ability to practice in compact states under the privilege, but the Montana license would remain valid and intact because that's issued by the state of Montana. So the individual could not work in another compact state. They could continue working in Montana. The compact requires the state that took the discipline to share the complete file with the home state of Montana. Then your office would independently look at that and determine if action was required on the Montana license. So, Senator Nolan, I don't know if I fully answered your question. I'm happy to clarify, but ultimately it's a states' rights issue, and we recognize states have their own independent timelines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Danny, so there really is no good answer as far as time-wise. How long does it take? Because everything is, I mean, if somebody's accused of killing somebody or accidentally, or stalking, we could go a long list. So I was just wondering if there was any, does it take just that one ethics complaint that goes 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months? Because I know severity is the issue. If you guys look and we say it's real severe, I guess I didn't want a compact to restrict, and it sounds like you said it wouldn't.
Correct.
Montana. And if we put this under the Department of Labor and Industry and they saw an issue, my question was, if we're on a compact, it doesn't preclude us from saying, nope, you're going to stop until we investigate. I guess that's probably my question.
Yes, sir. You have the EMS compact preserves your state's authority to operate the way that you operate today. So if you have the ability to move quick, you can move quick under the compact, and we do not restrict that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Senator Noland. Executive Secretary Small.
Yes, Madam Chair, I have also a question for Mr. Woodyard. You kept Mr. Woodyard, you kept going back and repeatedly and speaking about military personnel, right? What kind of numbers are we looking at there? I mean, is that a huge problem? Are we affecting a dozen people in state, 5 people, or 1,000? What would that look like, the affected amount of people?
Through the chair to Mr. Small, or Senator Small, I'm not sure there. Sorry for that. I don't know the number of military personnel impacted in Montana. I don't have access to your workforce data. Nationally, we do know that there are tens of thousands of EMS clinicians who are part of the military, and again, tens of thousands, probably well over 100,000 to 150,000 when you start including the spouses and those who are covered by military movement orders, which is why the Department of War has invested in the EMS Compact and has been a partner of the Compact. So from that aspect, I don't know your particular numbers. We do work very close with all the components of the military. The other segment that we work very closely with is our federal non-military partners. And so, Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, the wildland fire community that are operating under federal contracts, and even like federal police, etc. Many of them also have EMS, and so that number nationally, again, is in tens of thousands. I don't know Montana specific, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands raised. Oh, Ms. Tronstead. Ms. Tronstead, you're still on mute.
Thank you. I'm sorry. This question is probably for Mr. Bragg. I'm wondering how past compacts have impacted staffing levels and if that makes a significant difference in time for some of the employees.
Madam Chair, if I might.
Please, Mr. Bragg, go for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Gail. As far as staffing for the main things that we are doing are not impressing additional time for staff. There's additional work, however, there's some streamlined efficiencies there as well. So I wouldn't say that it adds additional time for employees. But at times it might. I'll give you the example. I think I've given this to the task force before. I apologize if I have. The massage therapy, the impact compact has a 600 hour, or I can't remember what it is, 640 hours. And in Montana, it takes 500 hours to get a license. And the compact, the way they grandfathered or let folks back in to accommodate that lower threshold for us in state is to say that continuing education hours can count towards the 600 hours. And so there's an additional burden on staff to have to go back and verify the additional 100 hours of continuing education before we make someone eligible. That impact massage therapy compact is not up and running yet. So there can be an additional burden to staff. However, I'm not aware of anything specifically related to the social work compact or the EMS compact that would add additional time for staff. And I hope that answers your question, Gail.
Yes, that does. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I don't see any other. Oh, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Chair Etchart. I have a question, I believe, for Mr. Logsdon, if I could. Webb Brown, Montana Dental Association. Thank you.
Yes, please. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay. Big question for us has always been what is the cost and who's going to pay? I guess we've had conversations about this in the past. I know that part of the effort on the dental hygienist compact was funded by a grant from the American Dental Association. That grant's run out. Has there been, still relatively new with the new commission that's been put together, have there been any estimates? Have there been any guesstimates of what it will cost for each state to participate? And if there has been a decision or if there's some kind of guidance on whether it would be paid by the board as a whole so that every licensee would basically be paying a part towards that, or whether it would be paid by a licensee if they wanted to participate in the compact. Thank you.
Mr.
Dan,
Logsdon,
we've got you muted still.
You're mute.
Sorry. I think it'll fall in line with the other compacts. You're going to have a cost to interface with the data system, which we're hoping to get started on here in the next couple of months. I wouldn't think that would be outside of what you're seeing for the other compacts as far as the cost goes. And, you know, the commission is actively fundraising in an effort to avoid any sort of assessment on the state, which the other compacts are also avoiding. And then we've also, I think I mentioned this, maybe I didn't, we're working on a part 2 of our cooperative agreement with the department. So, you know, we're hoping that's going to, you know, cover a lot of the cost for certain commissions that would need it. And I would certainly say that the dental compact would be one of those that needed some support over and above what some of the others get. So again, can't tell you that there's going to be what the cost would be for a state. I think it'd be wrong to assume that there's going to be a big cost for the state. Again, you know, the commission's actively trying to avoid that, and I think they'll be successful.
Thank you.
Does that cover your question, Mr. Brown?
It does. Thank you, Chair Etchart.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, perfect. So what we'll do now is we'll go ahead and move on to Ms. Sullivan. Ms. Sullivan, can you talk about the identifying further issues and then potential recommendations? And since you'll be taking notes on that, I'm just going to turn that completely over to you for a few minutes.
Okay.
And I'd love to hear questions, concerns from the committee and potential recommendations. And then we'll move on to pathways to licensure. And then we're going to go right into on pathways to licensure, number 5, telehealth. So we'll just have Ms. Sullivan go right into A3 and then B5 right after this. So Ms. Sullivan, you've got 3 and 5 here.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you very much to all of our presenters for the excellent information and answers to the subcommittee's questions. So just kind of to set the stage as far as recommendations go, this is the last meeting of the Healthcare Subcommittee before our in-person meeting on June 8th in Billings. And the task force will be considering any recommendations for the final report at that time. And so this would be the opportunity for this subcommittee to propose some recommendations or instruct me to draft some recommendations regarding the interstate compacts. And the reason why we're only talking about the EMS and the social work one, because although we did a general overview of all of the compacts at the last meeting, these were the 2 that this subcommittee identified that they wanted to focus on. Not saying that you can't recommend other compacts that are available, but these 2 would be the ones that this subcommittee should decide at this point in time if you want to put forth a recommendation to the full task force to encourage Montana to adopt the EMS compact, the social work compact, any other compacts or the like. So I'll open that up for someone to start the discussion.
So, Ms. Sullivan, also, one of the things I'd like the committee to know is that in Children's Families Health and Human Services, we are also discussing the interstate compact there. So in the interest of time and all those kinds of things too, we absolutely want everyone's opinion on the governor's licensing healthcare task force with this. But just so everyone knows also, I'm the chair of the CFHHS also, and I'll make sure to be cognizant of staff time so we're not double dipping and inappropriately using staff time on both committees. But we are looking at it also on CFHHS. However, that doesn't preclude us talking about it here. And if 2 committees are interested in moving forward, that just strengthens it. So just that caveat there, but we should absolutely talk about it here. I'm not saying we shouldn't talk about it. I just want you guys to know CFHHS is also looking at it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Amy. Amy Narrison, you raised your hand. Are you?
I think she's frozen.
Yeah, she looks frozen. She did send a chat saying that she is in support of both EMS and social work compacts. And so I guess in the interest of time, is maybe by a show of hands or applause, or I don't know, however you can do the little emoji things, or just saying aye, oh, here we go. Is this for both compacts, to encourage both compacts to move forward? Or it may be easier to say if there's anybody who is not interested, does not want to put forth that recommendation, maybe speak up. Okay, I'm getting
Both.
lots of hands. I like it. I'm sorry, someone was going to say something.
No, just both.
Both.
Okay. Okay, great. So what I'll do, and so we can move on to the next topic, is I will put forward I'll start a draft of a recommendation, and then I will work with the Representative Etchart and Tony King to kind of fine tune the language because they're the ones that will be presenting this to the full task force on June 8th. So Director Brereton or Stacey Anderson, did either of you have something to say or just still need to put your hands down? Good. Okay. So thank you very much, Daniel and Nathan and Donnie, for attending. You are free to stay and listen to the rest of the meeting, or you can drop off if you would like. And then I think, good. Okay. Thank you all very much. We're going to move on to the part B of the agenda, which is pathways to licensure. So this is starting the topic of expanding pathway options. And I do have on the agenda 5 different potential topics. However, I've prepared primarily for your consideration today the topic of telehealth because that has come up several times. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and just show you the maybe, let's see, where am I at? What do I want? Oh, screen 3. There we go. Okay, so you should all see the agenda, which is not what I wanted. Let's see here. Oh, man. Okay. So I did provide, excuse me, some documents on the, I'm not going to be able to grab them. Sorry. There we go. From the Federation of State Medical Boards, they've put together, and this is obviously for physician licensing, but they put together some documents, and this is just kind of for your information. There's they have a comparison of the states with permanent interstate telemedicine. So again, this is for medical board licensees only. And then they have another chart that talks about episodic and or follow-up care licensure exceptions. So I'm not going to go into detail on those because I also provided you with an Excel file to look at. This is a 50-state comparison of telehealth provisions by state. But to make it easier for you, I have summarized it and come up with some policy options for this committee to talk about. So, oops, there we go. So this is just a high-level summary of that Excel sheet that was provided to you all, and it's also posted on the task force website. But it compares it identifies some patterns across the states about telehealth, and then also provides some policy options for consideration. So I won't go through all of this, but you can see that there's the patterns that were identified is that most states now expressly authorize telehealth as a lawful modality of care. And then I did include all of the states that have these provisions. And you can see in blue, like Montana obviously authorizes telehealth. I did put in some information or ask when I did the 50-state analysis about coverage parity and reimbursement parity and all of that. And so you can see that there's, coverage parity, meaning if a service is covered in person, the payer can't deny it solely because it was delivered by telehealth. That is now the norm. So more than half of the states have that, including Montana. Payment parity is common, but it's not universal. And so there's some information on that. And you can see that, Montana has coverage parity, commercially, but not explicit payment parity in Medicaid. Prior authorization usually is allowed, but you can't have telehealth specific burdens. So there's some information on that. There's a comparison on audio only treatment. It's being recognized more often, but it can be limited. But you can see that we have audio telehealth. And then Medicaid telehealth rules are usually more operationally detailed than commercial insurance rules. So you can see that, in a lot of the states, this is what Medicaid rules specify. And then remote patient monitoring is usually treated separately. And so that's just kind of a comparison of the 50 states. And so the next page on page 4 talks about how we compare to these practices. So Montana is aligned currently by allowing it as a lawful practice modality. We have commercial coverage parity. We have strong Medicaid payment parity. And we also recognize multiple telehealth modalities in Medicaid. And then where we have some opportunities is Montana does not appear to have an express statewide commercial prior authorization parity rule. The Medicaid billing framework depends heavily on rules and provider manuals. And so what that means is that it's not codified, but it is in the details are delegated to agency rules and manuals. And then the commercial payment parity is less explicit, and treatment of home originating site reimbursement is narrower. So some options for consideration for this subcommittee is, and this is just, the department doesn't have a position on any of this. This is just for your discussion. So option one is that the commercial telehealth payment policy could be clarified, and there's some potential approaches in there on that. Option two, prohibit telehealth specific prior authorization barriers. Option three, require clear provider and consumer notice of telehealth billing rules. And I would say that none of this would be within Title 37 and licensing, but the task force has expressed, interest in learning about insurance and payments and stuff, and so I wanted to include that in there as well. Option four, establish a uniform minimum consent and notice standard. Option five, expand cross-state access through compacts or registration. This is probably where you could start this conversation because it is licensing, registration, acknowledgement specific. Option six, preserve and monitor audio only flexibility. And then option seven is align Medicaid and commercial policies where appropriate. So then just some considerations for you. And then this last thing is it's just a comparison table on all of the information that was presented above. So with that, I would open it up to comments and starting a discussion on what this committee would like to do with regards to telehealth.
Director Brereton, would you be able to maybe talk a little bit about DPHHS and clarify any positions DPHHS has before we open it up to full questions for the committee? Or would that, I think that might be helpful to hear with what you guys are thinking, what you're already doing, and where that can align with where we need to move forward. Would that be all right, Director Brereton?
Madam Chair, sure. So I don't know if we necessarily have a position on telehealth services, but the department is very supportive of telehealth. I think as Aaron mentioned, in the Medicaid program, we do generally provide parity in reimbursement for telehealth services. But what else would be helpful from the DPHHS perspective?
Is there anything that we currently aren't doing that we need to be doing in terms of any alignment with policies, federal, state, for payment? Is there anything alignment that we need to work on changing via any legislation, or do you guys already have it handled with the regulatory and rule writing?
Madam Chair, nothing comes to mind this morning, but happy to take that back and think through it. I would also be interested in any perspectives from the provider communities or their representatives on this call based on their experience with the Medicaid program. I can speak for Medicaid. I'm uncomfortable speaking on behalf of commercial payers or insurers.
Certainly. Mr. Brown, thank you, Director Brereton. Really appreciate your thoughts on that.
Chair Ashroth, that was going to be exactly my line of questioning to it. If I could ask Director Brereton, specifically, yes, on the Montana Medicaid, I guess the parity question there, is there an issue with conforming or at least bringing those two closer together? And that may require a bit more as well, but that would be my question. Thank you, Chair.
Madam Chair Webb, what do you mean by conforming or bringing those closer together?
Well, as we've indicated there, Ms. Sullivan, if you can scroll down, I think it was number 7, were we talking? Aligning them
Oh,
more
Medicaid
closely
with
there.
commercial.
Yeah, if you could. And maybe that's not immediate, but that's something I would like to know. Where are the differences? How great are they? And can they be
Yeah,
better aligned?
I think it's a great question, and it's something that the department would be very supportive of exploring alongside this committee and the overall task force. But again, I really feel like we need the commercial payer perspective here, and I'm not going to speak for them.
Thank you.
Ms. McCauley?
Hi, thank you, Chair. I was just going to kind of reply and offer my perspective as a provider in telehealth. Um, the way it's currently set up and the way the allowances are currently with Medicaid, I think they're sufficient. They allow for clarification of whether it's audio only or whether it's real-time video, and it does not require generally a location of where the patient is. It just that the patient is by telehealth. I think we do due diligence as providers to document that they're in the state of Montana because we need to do that for our licenses. And so I think that from the Medicaid standpoint, the billing and reimbursement and the process is adequate and smooth. Just generally noting that there is a risk for fraud in all areas, and noting that there's recent focus on that concern. I think there might be a way to put some safeguards in there just to kind of put another layer in that to make sure that it's not being abused. But I don't think that needs to be legislated or part of the task force, and I'd be glad to offer those concerns in another avenue. Thank you, Chair and Director Brereton.
Director Brereton, did you have any comments on that?
I did. Thanks. I was muted. Madam Chair, Kristen, thanks for your perspectives there. As an agency post COVID-19 public health emergency, we really leaned into making some of those pandemic era telehealth flexibilities permanent in the Medicaid program. And generally speaking, complaints regarding telehealth are not something that we tend to see here in the director's office, or don't often hear about concerns from providers. But we are certainly open to feedback. If there is confusing policy or manuals related to telehealth, we could explore that here, even separate from the commercial payer or parity conversation.
Ms. McCauley, did that cover your questions?
Thank you. I just will add my nurse clinic manager just got back to me that it seems like our group payers and private payers are following suit. So I think the way it's lined out is good. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Chair. Again, Stacy Anderson with the Primary Care Association and other clients. I would sort of echo that our experience with Medicaid as a payer around telehealth and payment parity has been good. There's not been a lot of challenges around prior authorization in this space with that particular payer. And I think in 2025, we did a lot of work around prior authorization with the private payers. I would have to go back and ask my clinics about whether those are being implemented and there's improvement in that space. And then I think there's still some question around payment parity in the private market with regard to telehealth services. And so I think that's something to continue to explore.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Executive Secretary Small?
Yeah, this was a quick question for the director too. Is pay parity the same between providers, like a nurse practitioner and physician providing the same service? Does Medicaid pay equally for the telehealth visit?
Madam Chair, Jason, I don't know the answer to that question off the top of my head. So we could certainly follow up with Aaron.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And Senator Chair Noland, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Charlie, if you could address this, or if not, let's get back to me later. But my issue is with the fraud. We're trying to prevent anything. I know you are, we all are. I was wondering if we've had very many instances that has been brought to your light or brought to your attention, or maybe the Department of Labor, whatever sideboards we can put on. We're not going to stop it all, but we sure need to tell people, in my opinion, don't do this here, because we will penalize you, or if you're a provider and you do some fraudulent things in billing. I don't want to say, I don't know if the best word to say is put the fear of God in them. Say, hey, don't do this. Do the right thing, because we're all supposed to do the right thing, but that doesn't always happen. We live in a society it's about money. And I hate to say that, but a lot of people do that. Why do we have all these fraudulent things happening across the other parts of the world? So I don't know if you have any other ideas, and I don't know if it was I can't remember the lady's name, Molly maybe, that had a comment. I'd like to see us have what's allowable and what's best direction for preventing fraud. Say, verbiage sometimes is a matter. If you're caught doing this, you put a dollar figure to it. I don't know if that's the right answer, but I wonder if you had any direction or thought on that.
Madam Chair, Senator Nolan, the department has a pretty robust fraud, waste, and abuse framework for the Medicaid program, right? With a focus on Medicaid providers. Telehealth claims would be or are assessed under that framework, just like in-person claims are. And as an agency, I think we've wanted to drive telehealth utilization, especially post public health emergency, as I alluded to earlier. So telehealth visits are not generally treated with higher scrutiny, but I can share with you that we're unaware of widespread fraud in the telehealth space. We're just not seeing it.
Yeah.
Senator Nolan, does that answer your question?
Yes, that's fine. Thanks.
And Madam Chair, Senator Nolan, I would add too, and this relates somewhat to Ms. Anderson's comment earlier. I think we, as part of our effort to drive utilization of telehealth services as appropriate, I think we want to ensure that the administrative burden for providers is not, and for our Medicaid members is not too great. So it's always, right, it's always about striking the right balance.
Thank you, Director Brereton. Executive Secretary Small, did you have another comment?
Oh, sorry. No, I forgot to lower my hand.
I saw it kind of change color a couple times, so I wasn't sure. Thank you. Ms. McCauley?
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to answer the question posed earlier by Mr. Small. The Medicaid does have different fee schedules for nurse practitioners versus physicians, so they are not being paid the same. Thank you, Chair.
Director Brereton?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and Kristen and Jason. So Kristen, that is correct. But Jason, do you mind just repeating your question one more time to make sure that we're addressing it? I was going to come back to you before we moved on, regardless.
Yeah, no,
And I think as I understood it, right? So the fee schedules that Kristen is referring to would remain intact, whether it's a telehealth visit or it's an or on-site in-person visit.
right. Yes. So is it the same for the telehealth service versus on-site or in person? Yes.
It is. Yes, there's parity.
Okay.
When you guys address that, can you just make sure to put everyone in the category of APP, and that would include all advanced practice providers and not just nurse practitioners, but PAs as well, because I'm sure that will come up. Did I lose everybody here?
A little bit. You were cutting in and out, Madam Chair.
Oh, sorry about that. I just wanted to say, I think that it will come up. Let's make sure if it's possible to include advanced practice providers, that would include CRNAs, nurse practitioners, and PAs as well. Because I think that definition is broad there, so we might as well address it all just in case that comes up. Any other comments, Director Brereton?
Madam Chair, Aaron, if we could scroll either back up or back down to the Medicaid commercial insurance alignment option. So, Madam Chair, Aaron, I'm wondering if we as a committee or subcommittee have time to adopt this option and explore here, just considering the overall task force work plan.
Yes, excuse me, Madam Chair, Director Brereton. This would be if this committee wants to begin crafting this as a recommendation for presentation to the full task force at the June 8th meeting. I think that would be appropriate. If you need any additional information on any of the other options or this option, we don't have a ton of time left. I think we only have 2 more meetings left, but we could certainly, staff could collect more information and we could have a more detailed discussion on it at the June meeting.
Thank you, Aaron. So, Madam Chair, DPHHS would be supportive of option 7, or at least moving option 7 forward alongside representatives from the commercial payer world.
Excellent. I'm sure Ms. Sullivan will record that going forward.
Okay. So does the committee want to talk about or need information about any of the other options on here? I don't know if I know that a big part of why this subject came up was because it was about getting more telehealth opportunities in Montana. And so looking at option 5, is that something that you all feel is of interest to kind of explore further, or do you just want to focus on option 7, and then maybe put the rest in the parking lot until either a full task force discussion or a future discussion? Don't all speak at once. So Kristen said she would support option 5 and more compacts.
Mr.
Likewise.
Longcake. Sorry, Director Brereton, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to say likewise, and I assume that the EMS and social work concepts would be included under this option 5.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Longcake, go ahead.
Yes, Madam Chair. This is Brad Longcake. I think the Montana Dental Hygienists Association would also support option 5. I just think it's a really good opportunity to advance dental care for Montana. So we would encourage the committee to continue to work and have discussions on this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Chair Buttrey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm just going to add on to that. In my role at MHA, we would absolutely support option 5 and option 7 being brought forth to the full task force. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Buttrey. Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, just reiterating and supporting option 5 and option 7 on behalf of the Primary Care Association.
Ms. Hensley?
Thank you on behalf of my clients. Again, 5 and 7 support. So that's Speech Language Hearing Association, optometrists, and occupational therapists.
Thank you. Any other further comments? We see there are some comments in the chat as well. So thank you for that. And then Ms. Sullivan, will you go ahead? Oh, Director Brereton?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before we move on, I was wondering if Aaron would just start from the top and slowly move through all of the options again so we can review those one more time collectively.
Sure. So option 1 is clarifying commercial telehealth payment policy. So this is clarifying whether commercial insurers must reimburse telehealth at the same rate as in-person services, or whether payment rates remain subject to provider insurer contracts. So it kind of goes along with option 7. Option 2 is prohibit telehealth specific prior authorization barriers. So Montana could add language stating that an insurer may not impose prior authorization, medical necessity documentation, or utilization review requirements on telehealth services that are more restrictive than those applied to the same service when delivered in person. Option 3, require clear provider and consumer notice of telehealth billing rules. Could require health plans to publish clear telehealth billing and authorization policies, and several points are included in that one. So I think a lot of this is more about education. And again, none of those so far have to do with the actual licensing. It's more about the insurance. Option 4, establish a uniform minimum consent and notice standard. So that is just more of an administrative option. And then we talked about option 5. And the last one is option 6, preserve and monitor audio only flexibility. And so this would just be more strengthening the policy.
So, Madam Chair, Aaron, it seems to me like, and I think you may have mentioned this, that option 1 and option 7 are linked to a degree.
Yes.
Okay.
Ms. Sullivan, did you want to talk about any of the others?
I think number 7 was the last one, which we had talked about. Yes. Yep. So sorry, I should have said I was done.
No worries. No worries. And then everybody's seeing all the comments in the chat as well, correct? Okay, perfect. Any other questions or concerns regarding this portion? Okay, Ms. Sullivan, do you have anything else to add then under telehealth?
No, Madam Chair. So what I'll do is I will start compiling some draft recommendations, and just like I talked about with the compacts, I will send it out and then and work with the co-chairs on kind of fine-tuning that language, and if we can have a preliminary recommendation or just a recommendation with an opportunity for a further discussion at the June 8th meeting with the entire task force, then we'll go that route.
Okay, excellent. And then Ms. Sullivan, would you like to move on then to apprenticeships and kind of what you've compiled so far with apprenticeships then? And is that all right with the rest of the committee if we move on from telehealth and go to apprenticeships?
So Madam Chair, I actually don't have anything new for apprenticeships in for this discussion. I will tell you that at the June 8th meeting, we are going to focus the entire morning on healthcare topics, and apprenticeships will be one of them. And so just in the interest of time and not repeating things, I just I put those 5 options as, that was everything that was in the work plan for expanding pathways. However, we are preparing a more robust discussion for the entire task force regarding apprenticeships, endorsements, and those pathways.
Okay. All right. What about endorsements? So you mentioned it just a little bit there. Do you want to do the same thing there as you're handling with apprenticeships? We're going to talk about that heavily at the June meeting. So
yes. Yep.
Okay. And full scope of practice concerns there?
So with the full scope of practice, there's actually that other document that we can go over with the public comment. The public comment recommendations. There are a few instances of full scope of practice. I think with that, generally, the committee has talked about encouraging the, practitioners to be able to practice within their full scope of practice up to their education levels. And so there are some specific recommendations in the comments that were provided by the public that we can go over it then.
Okay, so we'll discuss that then when we get to that the long document that you sent us earlier. So, and then out-of-state provider utilization, we'll go ahead and move on when we discuss that. I think that 28-page document, that'll probably be covered in there as well. Right. So does anybody, in terms of B on our agenda, does anybody have any comments or questions on B? And this would also include to identify further issues on this topic. Okay, I see no hands raised. So Ms. Sullivan, I think you sent us also previously, you had sent us the 28-page document then for pathways to licensure. Actually, let's go ahead and do, let's do C, pathways to licensure rural health transformation program. Director Brereton, did you have anything you wanted to add with that?
You're
Director
muted.
Brereton, you're on mute.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the committee, just a quick update on Rural Health Transformation Program policy commitments. So at this time, DPHHS will not be pursuing or moving forward with the nutrition CME policy commitment, nor the policy commitment related to dental hygienist scope of practice. For purposes of this task force and this committee, we need your support with the EMS Compact policy commitment, which very well aligns with the conversation that we had today. So I thank a number of stakeholders, the Montana Medical Association, the Board of Medical Examiners, the Montana Dental Hygienists Association, the Montana Dental Association, for some recent and productive conversations. But I think we're all in agreement that those will be tabled for now, and the department is taking steps to notify CMS accordingly. Madam Chair, Webb and/or Brad may have some additional thoughts in relation to the dental hygienist scope of practice policy commitment, if you're open to either or both of them speaking.
Certainly. I just, we do have quite a bit more, but absolutely I want to hear from them. I'll just ask their comments, just a brief overview, if that's all right. Mr. Longcake, would you like to start? Are you there?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity. I'm just going to be brief. Thank you for Director Brereton providing some context on that. We've had several conversations related to this, and I just think there is some challenges that still need to be worked out. So I think this is probably the appropriate decision at the moment. And I think all the stakeholders will continue to have discussions and try to find some solutions to move forward. But with that, Madam Chair, that's just a short and sweet version. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Webb, did you have any comments?
Yeah, I don't have any comment. Thank you.
Okay, well, that was great. We got through that. So excellent. And then Director Brereton, did you have anything else to add before?
Nothing else on the Rural Health Transformation Program. Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you so much. Anybody else? Anything before we go ahead and move on to the outstanding issues and the document that Ms. Sullivan will go over next? Okay, Ms. Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. And I apologize that I didn't actually put this on the agenda, but what I wanted to do was just start the conversation about, it's more of a brainstorming conversation about, we've received lots of public comments. Since the beginning of this, the Healthcare Subcommittee has received the most public comments. And I know it's a lot to go through, but there are definite recommendations that, that the public has put forward that they would like the subcommittee, and the task force to consider. So I thought it would be easier to just compile it all into one. So I'll go ahead and share my screen again. And before I show that document, I have to, oh, where is this at? 3. There we go. I did want to let you all know that I have included this policy paper that the department put together. It was last fall, I believe, that that we finalized it. This is more of a, this is just kind of a, it's a barriers to entry type paper that kind of goes through some standard barriers and then some ideas for the subcommittees to consider as you guys are moving forward with your work. So hopefully you have a chance to take a look at it and maybe you can find something useful out of it. I hope. But the report, this summary that Chair Etchart mentioned, what I did here is I just summarized all of the comments that just this subcommittee has received, and kind of tried to come up with some themes across the comments that that the public has provided to you all. And so you can see the first 2 pages just kind of talk about all the different comments that have been received and recommendations. And then the rest of the document, and this is more of like a worksheet for you, and we aren't going to have time to go through all of this, but I will kind of hopefully, and I know I only sent it out to you yesterday, and I apologize, but it took a while to put together. But I hopefully you were able to find a couple of these that maybe you want to talk about and answer, you know, a quick yes, quick no, or yeah, let's talk about that at the next meeting. But basically, for each of the recommendations that I found within the public comments, there's a separate page for each one. So this is, and it's not in any order except that it's in alphabetical order by profession. And again, like with the telehealth one, the department does not have a position on any of this. So this is meant to be a neutral document providing information only for you. But you can see on each of these pages, the commenter suggested a recommendation for addiction counselors. This is just an example to ease reciprocity and educational barriers for addiction counselors moving from other states. And so for each of these, I've provided the kind of reform type, if it's a scope of practice, reduce barriers, anything like that. The professions that they are talking about, their rationale as to what why they think the subcommittee should take a look at this, and then some policy objectives, and then a decision tool. This I actually stole from the Revenue Interim Committee on their tax credit review. This is kind of how they go through all the different tax credits. And so this could be a quick, you know, do you need more information about this? Yes. Well, what? That means you want to talk about it further, but you just need a little more information. Or no, this recommendation is clear. We understand everything about it. Do you want to proceed with it? Yeah, then great. Should it be amended? Or if it doesn't need to be amended, just ask me to draft a recommendation for presentation to the task force. And then if no, then do you want it to add it to a parking lot for a future meeting, or just no, this isn't something that we either have time to tackle or are interested in tackling. So that's kind of how each of these pages go. And again, you know, in the interest of time, I don't think we can't really go through all of them, but hopefully members have had a chance to at least kind of breeze through it and, you know, pick out a few that you want to talk about. And we can certainly use this. You can do this as your homework and then come up with some ideas for the next meeting to explore further.
So thank you, Ms. Sullivan. I really appreciate that. And Ms. Sullivan, you're absolutely right. We don't have time to debate every single one of these today. So what I would kind of look at is either in the comments or reach out individually to either Chair King or myself on items that are absolutely a no-go and items that are absolutely yes, and we can move forward on some of these. So if you just want to take a minute or two, if everybody has an item, I have a yes or no column written down for absolutely yes, absolutely no, and we can look at some of these things to move forward to talk about at our June 8th meeting. But like I said, we don't need to be in a huge policy debate about this because we've probably likely debated a lot of it going forward. But if anybody has quick yeses or nos that we want to go through, we'll look at everything and come up with the most common yeses. We'll eliminate the most common nos or absolutely hard nos from the committee. But I'd like to take some, and I'm seeing some comments that there's not, haven't had time to fully digest the document. So go ahead and email Ms. Sullivan, Mr. King, and myself, and we will compile absolute yeses and absolute nos from the committee and just pick the best ones going forward, if that's all right. And Ms. Narison, please.
Sorry, I think you just answered my question. So rather than having the discussion now, you guys would prefer just us to put it in an email?
I think so, just in the interest of time. And then everybody can also look at the document as well. And this is all from public comment. So really, that's probably going to be one of the best things moving forward. So everybody can look at this so that we do all due diligence to public comment, which is so important in the state of Montana. We all value that so much. And I mean that sincerely, for all of us to be able to look at it and reply back in an email if they so choose. Not everybody has to reply back if they don't want to, but I think that that would do due diligence to this comment, and then we can do our best efforts moving forward for the June 8th meeting.
And I will say that if anybody, as you're going through this, if you're wondering what the actual comment is, like the full comment, because this is obviously just a quick summary, and it's anonymous. And so, at least on this document, it is. The public comments that we've received are not, they're not anonymous, but they all are on our website. But if it would be helpful for you, if you're like, well, for this one, and I'm just using this as an example, like, who said that and what's the deal? What's the background on it? Let me know which ones you want, and I can, because I can grab the actual comment for you, or at least tell you which week that it was in, so you can go through and read the full comment.
Excellent. Ms. Narison, did you have anything else?
Yeah, sorry, I have one additional question. So in preparation for the June meeting, then Erin, will you send around the responses? Or like, do we anticipate we'll go through these at the June meeting?
Yeah, so just kind of thinking on the fly, I can, what I can do, which maybe would be helpful, I know that the Sunset Committee did, they asked me to put together a quick survey that they could fill out, and so that would help them with their upcoming meeting on exactly what to talk about. And so I can actually put this into, it just would just be in a Microsoft Forms that has like these questions. Are you interested in looking at this? Yes or no? And that way we can kind of get a consensus. But yeah, I will try to provide as much information ahead of the June meeting as I can. And so that can be a fruitful conversation.
Any more comments? Excellent. That's great. We look forward to compiling all of the email concerns then. And Ms. Sullivan.
I think
Sorry, you guys. I thought I muted that quickly. Sorry. Go ahead, Ms. Sullivan. On to the next.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I believe that was it as far as the agenda items go. So you can probably move on to public or instructions if anybody has any further instructions for me for the next meeting, or you can move on to public comment.
Anybody else? Anything? Okay, perfect. Let's go ahead and go to public comment. And if anybody comes up with any questions or concerns, just raise your hand and we'll get to you.
Madam Chair, did you want me to call on people?
Miss Sullivan, I don't see any hands raised. If you see hands raised, yes, please.
Okay, I do. And then do you have the agenda in front of you to read the statement, or would you like me to read it?
Yeah, I can read it. So public comment. The subcommittee now offers the public in attendance an opportunity to comment on any public matter under the jurisdiction of the subcommittee that is not on the current agenda. The subcommittee cannot act, but will listen to comments and may ask staff to place the issue on a future agenda. The chair may limit the comment period to proceed with the subcommittee meeting. Public commenters should state their first and last name when offering comments. Was that the one you wanted?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And so before we do that, I did, sorry, I forgot I had an announcement just about the June meeting in Billings. Hopefully you all received the accommodation information from me last week with links to hotels that we have reserved some room blocks for. We'll have a full agenda or some better timelines for you, hopefully in the coming week. But in the interest of time and getting those the contracted rate, if you need a hotel room for either Sunday night or Monday night or both, please go ahead and reserve your rooms before those blocks expire, which I think is next week. So if you didn't get that information, then contact me and I'm happy to send it out again. So Madam Chair, we only have one person raise their hand for public comment. I don't know their name. It is under GFES.
Good morning. Yeah, Justin Groves with Great Falls Emergency Services, GFES. Last name's GROHS. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Quick comment on the compact as far as EMS goes. I'm here in Great Falls, managing the paramedic ambulance service here and also representing the Montana Ambulance Association. And we fully support this initiative for ECP licensing. We have some pretty significant workforce challenges, and this will help address some of those challenges we have and will streamline our ability to recruit and onboard paramedics from other states. So we do appreciate your support on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Groves. Is there anybody else, Miss Sullivan? And I'm sorry, I'm just going to let you handle it because I can't see any hands.
That's okay. No, that was the only one. So we'll just call one more time. If you have a comment, please raise your hand. And I do not see anybody raising their hand.
Okay. Any further comments from the committee? Miss Sullivan, any more? Miss Nearson?
I'm sorry to beat this issue to death. But before I circulate that policy recommendation document to my clients, do you anticipate we'll have a different document to do that with for feedback that we should wait for, or should we go ahead and get feedback according to that current document?
I would probably start reaching out to your stakeholders now.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to compile any additional comments. So the comments, we had a huge influx of public comment at the very beginning when we first started this process a couple months ago. They've kind of petered off a little bit. And so I think that's a good representation of the comments and recommendations from the public. I'll provide a summary document for the subcommittee at the next meeting, but nothing else as far as preparatory work goes.
Okay, thank you. I won't ask any more questions about it right now.
Thank
Amy,
you for
I'll
that
do it for
caveat,
you.
Ms. Nearson. Director Brereton, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, thanks, Madam Chair. Aaron, I just want to confirm that instructions will be sent via email related to that policy document and anything else that you need in advance of the June 8th or the June meeting.
Yes, Madam Chair, Director Brereton, yes, I will send, I'll come up with a form or something that can help you with your responses, and I'll try to send that out just as soon as I can, probably not today, but early next week.
Awesome. With any deadlines or timelines that you're working with. Thank you very much.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Excellent job, everyone, today. And I'm proud of everybody. We finished in 2 hours almost exactly. And anything else before we move forward and adjourn? Excellent. We'll see everybody on Monday, June 8th, and I look forward to your comments on the document. And we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you,
you
Chair.
all.